He walked 6 miles in the summer heat for one reason: to hand-deliver a lost wallet. Not for a reward, but because inside it was a photograph he never thought he'd see again. A photograph of the CEO's daughter, who was also his. The dad is Leo, a mechanic who found the wallet at his shop. The CEO is Vivian, a tech visionary who lives in a glass tower. They haven't spoken in 12 years, not since the accident that took everything from both of them. And the only thing stranger than this reunion is the question it forces into the light. Why, after all this time, did he have to see her now? 12 years ago, they were Leo and Vivian, two kids in love, expecting their first child. Today, they are a story of two shattered worlds. He works 14-hour days at Rowan Auto, a shop he inherited from his father, repairing cars for people who never look him in the eye. She runs Apex Dynamics, a tech unicorn valued at over $4 billion, from the top floor of the Ascension Tower. Their paths were supposed to diverge, but they were never supposed to forget. The accident happened on Route 9, a rainy October night. Vivian, 7 months pregnant, was driving them back from a friend's party. A truck ran a red light. The impact was on her side. First responders had to use the jaws of life to cut Leo out. They pulled Vivian from the wreck unconscious but alive. Their daughter, Lily, was delivered by emergency C-section at the scene. She lived for 47 minutes in an ambulance, never taking a breath on her own. Leo held her once. Vivian, in a medically induced coma, never did. In the aftermath, grief didn't pull them together, it atomized them. Leo buried himself in the mechanics of things that could be fixed because people couldn't be. Vivian, upon waking to the news, shut down completely. She signed the papers for Lily's cremation from a hospital bed, then checked herself into a psychiatric facility for 3 months. When she emerged, she cut all ties, changed her number, and used a substantial inheritance to build a fortress of ambition. Leo got the auto shop, a mountain of medical debt and a ghost. For 12 years, that was the story. Leo raised no one. Vivian answered to no one. Until 3 days ago, when a Mercedes S-Class pulled into Rowan Auto. The client was impatient, left the car for an oil change and tire rotation. When Leo cleaned out the footwell, he found the wallet. Black alligator skin, no cash, just a platinum credit card and a driver's license for Vivian Chase. And behind the license, a single photograph. Not a stock corporate headshot. A candid picture of a little girl about 6 years old, with Leo's dark brown hair and Vivian's piercing blue eyes, sitting on a swing. On the back, in faded pencil, 2 words: Lily Smile. The photo was impossible, a digital ghost. Leo sat in the silent garage for an hour just staring. He knew every detail of his daughter's face from the one picture he owned. This was not that face. This was a living, breathing child who shared their features but was a stranger. He called the number on the business card tucked in the wallet. A robotic assistant answered for the office of the CEO. He drove to the address on the license, an old one from her parents' estate. The house was sold. The new owners knew nothing. There was only one way to get answers. He knew where she lived. The Ascension Tower penthouse was the subject of a glossy magazine feature he'd accidentally seen at a dentist's office. The article called it a monument to moving on. So at the end of his shift, covered in grease and exhaustion, he started walking. 6.3 miles in 89-degree heat. He didn't take the bus. He didn't call a cab. This was a penance, a pilgrimage to the altar of a question that had just rewritten his past. Meanwhile, 42 floors above, Vivian Chase was preparing for the most important night of her professional life. In 12 hours, she would sign a merger that would cement her legacy. Her assistant had just left. The silent penthouse was a monument to curated perfection. But on her wrist, hidden under the sleeve of her silk robe, was a thin, worn leather bracelet, its only adornment a small, tarnished silver heart. She never took it off. It was the only thing she'd kept from before. The intercom buzzed, an unwelcome sound in her sanctuary. Security informed her a man was in the lobby insisting on returning a personal item. No appointment, disheveled. She almost told them to send him away, but a cold, familiar dread prickled at her neck. She had the concierge bring the item up first. The wallet. Her blood ran cold. She opened it, saw the license, and then her fingers found the photograph. The one picture she allowed herself to keep. The one secret she had built her entire new life to protect. She opened the door. The man standing there was a ghost from a buried life. Older, wearier, drenched in sweat, but it was him. For a long moment they just stared, 12 years of silence screaming between them. He finally spoke, his voice rough. "Vivian," he held out the wallet. "I think you need to explain this." She took it, her hand trembling. She looked from the photo to his face, and the fortress around her heart cracked. "Leo," she whispered, the name foreign on her tongue. "You weren't supposed to find this. No one was." Behind her, from deep within the penthouse, the clear, bright sound of a child's laughter echoed down the marble hallway. Leo's eyes snapped toward the sound, then back to the photo in her hand, the little girl on the swing. The laugh of a child who was alive right now in this apartment. His breath caught. Vivian saw the realization dawn on his face, and hers filled with pure terror. She tried to close the door. "You have to leave, right now." But it was too late. From around a corner, a little girl with blue eyes and brown hair, maybe 6 years old, peeked out. "Mommy, who's at the door?" She looked directly at Leo, her head tilted in curiosity. And in that instant, Leo knew. The accident on Route 9, the 47 minutes, the death certificate he'd signed. All of it was a lie. Their daughter was alive. The world stopped. The hum of the city below, the chill of the air-conditioned penthouse, all of it vanished. There was only the living, breathing proof of a 12-year lie standing in the hallway. Leo took a step forward, his voice a cracked whisper. "You told me she died." Vivian moved faster than thought. She stepped back, pulling the little girl out of sight. "Lily, sweetheart, go to your room. I'll be right there." The girl, confused, obeyed. Vivian closed the front door until it was just a crack, her face pale in the sliver of light. "Leo, please, you have to go." "Go?" The word wasn't a question, it was a detonation. "That's my daughter. You let me bury an empty casket. You let me think for 12 years that I lost everything. Explain it, right now." The force of his words pushed her back. She opened the door wider, her defiance crumbling into sheer panic. "Do you think I wanted this? Do you have any idea what was happening?" She glanced over her shoulder, lowered her voice to a frantic hiss. She wasn't supposed to survive. The doctors said her brain was without oxygen for too long. They said she would be a vegetable if she lived at all. My parents, they were already arranging a private facility, someplace far away, to hide the damaged air. Leo felt the floor tilt. "What are you talking about?" "They gave me a choice," Vivian said, tears now cutting through her perfect composure. "Sign the papers declaring her deceased, let them handle the disposition, and inherit the trust fund to rebuild my life. Or fight them, be cut off with no resources, and try to care for a profoundly disabled child alone." I was 22, Leo. I was broken. And then a miracle. After 3 weeks, she opened her eyes. She squeezed my finger. She was in there. And I knew if my parents found out, they'd take her and put her in that home anyway. So I hid her. The sheer scale of the deception was a physical weight. "You hid her, from everyone, from me." "I had to." Vivian's whisper was sharp with 12 years of imprisoned truth. "I used the inheritance to build this. To build a life where I could protect her, give her the best care, the best doctors. She's had surgeries, therapies. She's perfect, Leo. She's smart and funny, and she's alive because I lied." Leo's mind raced, grappling with the inverted reality. The grief he'd carried was a phantom, but the anger was real and hot. "And what about what you took from me? From her? I'm her father." "You were a mechanic with debt and grief." The words burst out, cruel and truthful. "What could you have given her that I couldn't give her 1,000 times over? Security, the best medical care, a name that opens doors instead of closing them. Look at this place." She gestured at the marble and glass. "This is what I gave her." Leo looked past her into the vast, sterile apartment. "You gave her a cage, and you made me a ghost in my own life." He took a deep, shuddering breath. "I want to see her, properly." Vivian blocked the doorway. "No, not like this. You're angry, you're in shock." "She's my daughter." His voice rose, echoing in the foyer. From down the hall, a small voice called out, "Mommy, are you okay?" Vivian's face transformed, panic morphing into a mask of calm. "I'm fine, honey, just a loud delivery man." She turned back to Leo, her eyes pleading. "Please, go, come back tomorrow, we'll talk. I'll explain everything, but not now, not in front of her." Leo saw the raw terror in her eyes, not for herself, but for the child. It was the one piece of her he still recognized. He nodded once, a sharp, mechanical motion. "Tomorrow, 9 a.m. you will explain everything, and I will meet my daughter." He turned and walked back to the elevators, his body moving on autopilot. The ride down was a blur. The lobby, with its silent, judging concierge, was a tunnel. He emerged into the evening heat, the sweat on his clothes now cold. He didn't walk home. He sat on a bus bench, staring at the monolithic tower, at the single lit window on the top floor. His daughter was up there, living a life he knew nothing about. Inside the penthouse, Vivian slid down the back of the door until she was on the floor. The cool marble did nothing to calm her racing heart. The carefully constructed world she had built, brick by brick over 12 years, had just been hit with a wrecking ball named Leo. She heard soft footsteps. Lily stood there holding a stuffed rabbit, her blue eyes wide. "Who was that man, Mommy?" He looked sad. Vivian pulled her daughter into a tight hug, inhaling the scent of her shampoo, strawberries, and sunshine. "He's someone from a long time ago, before you were born." She held Lily at arm's length, studying her face. She saw Leo in the stubborn set of her jaw, in the way her eyebrows knitted together when she was concerned. The lie was no longer containable. "Sweetheart, how would you feel if you had a dad?" Lily blinked. "Like Emily at school, but you said my daddy was an angel in heaven." The old, practiced lie tasted like ash. "What if I was wrong? What if he was here and he wanted to meet you?" Lily thought for a moment, a serious expression on her young face. "Is he nice?" Vivian thought of Leo, of his calloused hands and his tired eyes, of the unwavering love she once knew was there. "He used to be the nicest man I ever knew." Across the city, Leo finally stumbled into his small, silent house. He went straight to the single bookshelf in the living room and pulled down a plain wooden box. Inside were the relics of his loss: the hospital bracelet, the single grainy ultrasound photo, the tiny footprint on a card, and the death certificate. He stared at it now, the official seal, the doctor's signature. Vivian Chase, mother. Leo Rowan, father. Cause of death: anoxic brain injury due to placental abruption following traumatic accident. It was all a fiction, signed and notarized. He picked up his phone, his fingers hovering. He wanted to call the police, to scream fraud, kidnapping, but a cold, logical part of his brain, the part that fixed complex engines, intervened. She was the mother. She had wealth, power, and a 12-year head start. He had a death certificate with his name on it and a shop full of debt. In the eyes of the law, Lily Chase was Vivian's daughter. Leo Rowan's daughter was legally dead. He needed leverage. He needed information. The next morning, he didn't go to the penthouse at 9. He went to the county clerk's office. He requested the full, sealed record of the accident. The clerk was hesitant, citing privacy. Leo insisted, his voice low and desperate. Finally, she returned with a thin file. The police report was standard, but the attached ambulance report from a private medical service called Escalapian Response had an addendum. A handwritten note on a separate sheet, paperclipped to the back. It listed the names of the responding personnel. One name was circled in red pen by some long-ago clerk, Dr. Arthur Finch. Leo had never heard that name. He searched it on his phone in the clerk's dusty lobby. Dr. Arthur Finch, a prominent obstetrician and geneticist, now retired, a founding board member of the Chase Family Foundation, Vivian's family doctor. The pieces began to click together with a terrible, grinding sound. The private ambulance, the family doctor on scene, the swift declaration of death. It wasn't just Vivian's choice. It was a coordinated operation. Her parents hadn't just offered a choice, they had engineered the entire outcome. He drove to the address listed for Finch's practice, an upscale medical plaza. The office was closed, a for lease sign in the window. A receptionist from the adjacent dermatologist's office saw him peering through the glass. Looking for the doctor, he retired about 5 years ago, moved to the gated community on Willow Lake. Good luck getting in there without an appointment. Leo drove to Willow Lake. The guard at the gate was polite but immovable. Dr. Finch isn't accepting visitors. You're not on the list. Leo parked down the street, a plan forming. He wasn't a soldier or a detective. He was a mechanic. He understood pressure points. He waited until a landscaping truck approached the gate. As it opened, he pulled his own truck in behind it, close enough that the guard assumed they were together. He found Finch's house, a low-slung modernist building overlooking the lake. He knocked on the door. The man who answered was in his 70s, wearing a cashmere sweater and an expression of mild annoyance. "Yes, I don't accept solicitations." "Dr. Finch, my name is Leo Rowan. You were on the ambulance that responded to my accident on Route 9 12 years ago. You pronounced my daughter dead." The color drained from Arthur Finch's face. He looked over Leo's shoulder as if expecting to see someone else. I don't know what you're talking about. You need to leave." "Vivian told me everything," Leo said, pushing forward, stepping into the foyer. "About the choice her parents gave her, about hiding Lily. But she didn't tell me about your part. You signed the death certificate for a living baby." Finch backed away, his composure shattered. "It wasn't like that. The prognosis was catastrophic. It was a mercy." "A mercy you got paid for," Leo stated, the accusation hanging in the air. "By the Chase Foundation, for your discretion." Finch sank into a hallway chair. "They would have ruined me. I had debts. They offered a clean slate. And the child, they said she would be cared for in a private institution. I thought it was for the best." He looked up at Leo, his eyes haunted. "I didn't know Vivian would keep her, I swear. I heard rumors a few years later that she had a niece living with her. I put it together. I've lived with it every day." Leo crouched down, putting himself at eye level with the trembling doctor. "You're going to live with it differently now. You're going to write a new statement about what really happened that night. You're going to sign it, and you're going to get it notarized. And you're going to give me the names of everyone else who was in on it." Finch shook his head. "They'll destroy me. And I will take this story to every news outlet in the country," Leo said, his voice ice. "A wealthy family fakes a grandchild's death to avoid scandal. A doctor bribed to sign a false death certificate. You'll be destroyed anyway. This way, you have a chance to do the right thing. For once." An hour later, Leo left Willow Lake with a sealed envelope in his hands. Inside was a 2-page confession from Dr. Arthur Finch, detailing the pressure from Vivian's parents, the false prognosis he'd been instructed to give, and the financial grant his research institute received 6 months later. It named Vivian's father, Robert Chase, and the family lawyer, Martin Croft. Leo now had a weapon, but as he drove toward the Ascension Tower, a new, more terrifying thought occurred to him. If Vivian's parents were capable of this, what would they do now to protect their secret, their reputation, and their billion-dollar merger? He wasn't just fighting for a daughter. He was walking into a war. The penthouse door opened before Leo could knock. Vivian stood there, dressed for battle in a sharp black suit, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. She didn't invite him in. "My father's lawyers just left. They know you're here." Leo held up the sealed envelope. "I know what they did, all of it. I have a statement from Arthur Finch." A flicker of something fear crossed her face before it hardened. "You think that matters? A disgraced retired doctor's word against the Chase Foundation. They'll bury him and they'll bury you. They've already started." She thrust a tablet into his hands. On the screen was a legal document, a motion filed in family court just an hour earlier. Petition for sole custody and declaratory judgment of paternity. The petitioner, Vivian Chase. The respondent, Leo Rowan. The grounds: abandonment, instability, and a history of financial and emotional incapacity. Abandonment. Leo's voice was dangerously quiet. "They made me file it," Vivian said, her own voice breaking. "They said it was preemptive, to establish my position before you could make a claim. If I didn't, they would file one themselves, claiming I was an unfit mother for perpetuating a fraud and seek to have Lily made a ward of the family trust. They would take her from both of us. Leo felt the walls closing in. The law, money, power. It was all a maze designed by her family. So your play is to legally erase me before the fight even starts. My play, she said, snatching the tablet back, is to keep my daughter, don't you understand? This merger I'm signing tonight isn't just business. The terms give me full, uncontested control of my trust and my shares. It severs their financial leash. For the first time in my life, I won't need their permission or their money. I can tell them to go to hell and protect Lily. But if you blow this up now, if you go public with your doctor's note, the deal collapses. The investors will run. I'll be powerless again, and we will both lose her. For the first time, Leo saw the full chessboard. Her gilded cage had a lock on both sides. She wasn't just the jailer, she was the most important prisoner. And after the merger, you get your power. What happens to me? Vivian looked away toward the window where Lily was presumably in another room. We work something out, visitation, a role in her life, but it has to be quiet, Leo, controlled. There can be no scandal. The mechanic in him recognized a bad deal, a promise of scraps later in exchange for silence now. He shook his head. No, that's not good enough. I want to meet her, today, right now, without lawyers, without your parents listening in. You owe me that much, or I walk out of here and go straight to the press with this envelope. They stood in a stalemate, two wounded animals circling. Finally, Vivian sagged. Fine, 15 minutes, but you follow my lead. She's fragile. She's had a lot of medical anxiety in her life. Vivian led him through the spacious, impersonal apartment to a sunroom that was an explosion of color. Art supplies, books, a small keyboard. And there, building an elaborate Lego castle, was Lily. She looked up and her eyes, his eyes, he realized with a jolt, widened. You're the sad man from the door. Leo knelt, keeping his distance. Yeah, that was me. I'm a friend of your mom's. My name is Leo. I'm Lily. Do you like castles? She held up a partly built turret. I think they're pretty cool, he said, his throat tight. I like building things too, cars mostly. Cars are noisy, she declared, then added thoughtfully, but Mommy says useful things are sometimes noisy. She glanced at Vivian, who gave a stiff, encouraging nod. Do you want to help? I'm building the dungeon. It needs a really strong door. For the next 15 minutes, Leo Rowan helped his daughter build a dungeon door. He learned she hated carrots but loved astronomy, that she could name all the planets and wanted to see a rocket launch, and that she had a faint, silvery scar just below her hairline, from one of the many surgeries Vivian had mentioned. He learned the sound of her laugh, and it was the most beautiful, terrifying sound he'd ever heard. When Vivian gently said time was up, Lily looked disappointed. Will you come back and see my castle when it's finished? Leo looked at Vivian, then back at his daughter. I hope so, Lily, more than anything. As Vivian ushered him back to the foyer, the atmosphere had changed. The raw hostility was gone, replaced by a complicated, shared dread. She's amazing, Leo whispered. I know, Vivian said, and for a second she was just a mother, proud and afraid. The merger signing is at 7 tonight at the Apex headquarters. If you release that statement before then, it's over, for all of us. What if they're planning something anyway? Leo asked. Your parents, they don't strike me as people who just hope for the best. Before she could answer, Vivian's personal phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and her face went ashen. It was a security feed showing the building's garage. Two men in dark suits were talking to the concierge, then heading for the private elevator banks. One of them was Martin Croft, the family lawyer. The other was a man Leo recognized from magazine covers, Robert Chase. They're here, Vivian breathed. They said they were sending papers. They didn't say they were coming themselves. They're not here for papers, Leo said, the instinct to protect Sergey. They're here for Lily, to take her somewhere safe until you fall in line. Panic seized Vivian. The nanny has the day off. She's in the sunroom if they get up here. Leo made a decision. Get her, take her out the service entrance. Go to my shop. It's the last place they'd look. Here's the key. He fished it from his keyring. Lock the door, pull the shade. Don't answer for anyone but me. Where will you be? Buying you time. He stepped toward the private elevator, positioning himself directly in front of the doors. The elevator chimed. The doors slid open. Robert Chase was every inch the patriarch. Silver hair, tailored suit, an aura of absolute authority. Martin Croft, bespectacled and carrying a briefcase, stood beside him. They both froze at the sight of Leo. Who is this? Robert's voice was cold, directed at Vivian, who stood frozen in the hallway entrance. I'm the man whose daughter you tried to erase, Leo said, not moving. Robert's eyes narrowed, dismissing him, and returned to Vivian. This is the complication. Vivian, we need to speak, alone, about tonight. The board has some last-minute concerns about stability. She's not going anywhere with you, Leo said. Martin Croft stepped forward. Sir, you have no standing here. This is a private family matter. You are trespassing. I suggest you leave before we involve building security. Involve them, Leo challenged. And while you're at it, involve the district attorney. I'd love to discuss the statute of limitations on fraud, conspiracy, and falsifying death records. He held up his phone. I've already scanned Dr. Finch's statement to a cloud drive. You can have me removed, but the story goes live the second I hit the pavement. Robert Chase's composure cracked just for a moment. A vein pulsed in his temple. He stared at Leo with a new, calculating intensity. You have no idea what you're interfering with. This is about the future of a company that employs thousands. This is about my daughter, Leo shot back. You don't get to use her as a bargaining chip anymore. Robert turned his icy gaze to Vivian. Is this your strategy, aligning with this person to sabotage the merger, to sabotage your own future and your child's future? Vivian found her voice, steel creeping into it. My strategy, father, is to ensure I have a future that I control, that Lily has a future you can't auction off. The merger signing is at 7. I will be there, and you will sign the transfer of control as agreed. Then we will discuss everything else. It was a stalemate played in whispers and threats. Robert clearly understood that Leo was a wild card, a wrench in HIS Chinese letter machinery. Forcing a scene here could backfire spectacularly. Very well, Robert said, his voice smooth again. 7 o'clock, do not be late. He gave Leo one last, contemptuous look. A word of advice, Mr. Rowan. Some foundations are better left unexcavated. You might not like what's buried underneath. The elevator doors closed on them. The moment they were gone, Vivian slumped against the wall. They're going to do something at the signing. I know it. Then we'll be ready, Leo said. Get Lily to the shop. Now, I'll meet you there after. Why are you doing this? She asked, the question loaded with 12 years of guilt and confusion. Because she's my daughter, he said simply. And because for the first time, I think you might actually be on her side. An hour later, Lily was safely tucked in the small office of Rowan Auto, fascinated by the diagrams of engine parts on the walls. Vivian, out of place in her suit amidst the grease and tools, paced. Leo was on his laptop digging. Robert's last threat gnawed at him. Some foundations are better left unexcavated. He started searching his own name plus Chase plus the accident date, years of nothing. Then, buried in a local community forum archive from about 8 years ago, a comment. Heard the Rowan boy never really recovered from that crash. Total wreck. Word is toxicology was a mess. Shame. It was just gossip, but it planted a seed. He called an old buddy, Mike, who now worked for the city. Mike, I need a huge favor. The full * traffic investigation report for my accident. Route 9, October 12th, 12 years back. Not the public summary. The evidence locker file. Leo, man, that's sealed. Please, Mike, it's life and death. An hour later, an encrypted file arrived. Leo opened it. The standard report was there. Skid marks, vehicle positions, witness statements citing the truck running the light. Then he saw the supplemental forensic report, vehicle system diagnostics, the data from Vivian's car's computer which had been recovered. His blood went cold. According to the data, in the 3 seconds before impact, the car's electronic stability control had been manually disengaged. The driver had switched it off, and in the final second, the throttle showed not a release but a surge. The car hadn't just been hit, it had accelerated slightly into the path of the truck. The official investigation had concluded the system failure was due to impact damage. The throttle surge was deemed an electrical anomaly. Case closed. But Leo, the mechanic, knew better. You don't disengage stability control on a wet road unless you're trying to lose control. And a throttle surge that precise, right before impact, wasn't an anomaly. It was an input. He looked up from the screen, his face pale. Vivian saw his expression. What is it? He turned the laptop to her, pointing to the lines of technical data. The accident. It wasn't just a tragic mistake. Your car's computer says someone turned off the stability control, and someone hit the gas, not the brake, right before the truck hit you. Vivian stared, uncomprehending. That's impossible. I would never. I was 7 months pregnant. I know, Leo said, his voice hollow. Which means someone else did. Someone who had access to your car before that drive. Someone who needed a tragedy to force a choice. To get you to sign their papers. To get rid of a problem. The room spun. The foundation of the last 12 years didn't just crack, it vaporized. The cover-up wasn't to hide a living child from scandal. It was to hide a murder attempt. Lily's survival wasn't a secret to be managed. It was a miraculous witness to a crime her own grandparents had orchestrated. And Leo and Vivian had just agreed to walk into a room alone with them. The silence in the auto shop was deafening, broken only by the distant sound of Lily humming to herself in the office. The truth they'd just uncovered was a black hole, swallowing 12 years of grief and rewriting them as premeditated murder. Vivian was shaking, staring at the technical report on the screen as if it were written in a foreign language. They tried to kill us, their own daughter, their grandchild. To protect the family name from a damaged heir, Leo finished, the pieces locking into a monstrous picture. The accident was the solution. When Lily survived anyway, the cover-up became Plan B. He looked at Vivian, seeing not the powerful CEO, but the terrified young woman she'd been. You can't go to that signing. If I don't, she said, her voice trembling, they'll know we're onto them. They'll disappear, or worse, they'll come for Lily directly. We have to go, but we go with a different plan. A fierce, cold light entered her eyes. The survivor was taking over from the victim. We record everything. We get them to admit it. Then we burn it all down. Leo called Mike back. I need another favor, a big one, he explained quickly. Mike, after a long pause, agreed. For you, Leo, and for that little girl. At 6:45 p.m., Leo and Vivian walked into the gleaming lobby of Apex Dynamics headquarters. Lily was safe with Mike's wife, a former police dispatcher, at an undisclosed location. Vivian wore a dark blue dress, her posture regal. Leo wore the only clean button-down shirt he owned, looking every bit the out-of-place mechanic. Hidden in Vivian's clutch purse was a live-streaming audio recorder, linked to a cloud server and to Mike, who was monitoring from his car nearby. The boardroom was all glass and cold light. Robert Chase and Martin Croft were there, along with 3 stern-faced board members from the merging company. The documents were laid out on the long table. Robert smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Vivian, you're late, and you brought a guest. His tone dismissed Leo entirely. He's my advisor, Vivian said, her voice steady, given the sensitive nature of tonight's discussions. One of the visiting board members, a woman named Pritchard, frowned. This is highly irregular. The merger agreement specifies. The merger agreement, Vivian interrupted, specifies a transfer of full voting control to me upon signature. My advisor is here to ensure that happens without complication." She took her seat at the head of the table. Leo stood behind her, a silent sentinel. Robert's smile tightened. "Let's proceed then. The documents are all in order." He gestured for Martin Croft to begin. As Croft droned on about clauses and stipulations, Vivian leaned forward. "Before we sign, Father, I have a question, a personal one, about the accident." The room stilled. Robert didn't blink. "This is neither the time nor the place." "It's the only time and place," Vivian pressed. "You see, I've recently come into possession of the full forensic report from my car's computer. It shows some anomalies. The stability control was disengaged just before impact, and there was a throttle surge. It suggests the crash wasn't entirely accidental." Martin Croft stopped talking. The visiting board members exchanged confused glances. Robert Chase placed his hands flat on the table. "Ancient history. The investigation concluded it was an electrical fault caused by the collision." "A convenient fault," Leo spoke for the first time, his voice echoing in the quiet room. "One that happens to mimic exactly what someone would do if they wanted to cause a loss of control on a wet road." Robert's gaze cut to Leo, pure venom. This is your doing, poisoning her mind with conspiracy theories from the gutter." "It's not a theory," Vivian said, pulling a printed copy of the report from her bag and sliding it down the table. "It's data, and it matches another story I heard today, from Dr. Arthur Finch. He told me all about the choice you gave me, the one where you paid him to declare my living daughter dead." Pritchard, the board member, stood up. "Mr. Chase, what is she talking about?" "She's emotionally compromised," Robert barked. "This is a pathetic attempt to sabotage the merger and seize control through scandal." "No," Vivian said, rising to meet him. "This is me taking control by telling the truth. You tried to kill me and my unborn child to avoid a scandal. When that failed, you committed fraud to hide her. You've been blackmailing me with her existence ever since, forcing my compliance. Well, the blackmail ends tonight." Robert laughed, a dry, hollow sound. "You have no proof of these insane allegations. Only the ravings of a disgraced doctor and a grease monkey with a grudge. Sign the papers, Vivian, or I will have you removed from this company and declared unfit, and you will never see your daughter again." It was the threat they'd been waiting for, on tape, in front of witnesses. Vivian didn't flinch. She looked at the board members. "The merger with Apex Dynamics is predicated on my leadership and stability. How stable does a company look when its incoming chairwoman is being blackmailed by its outgoing chairman over a fake death and attempted murder?" She reached into her purse and turned off the recorder. "The audio of this conversation is already with the district attorney and the Securities and Exchange Commission. The police are likely on their way." Chaos erupted. Robert Chase surged to his feet, his face purple with rage. Martin Croft began frantically gathering papers. The visiting board members were shouting, demanding explanations. It was then that the conference room door opened. Not police, but Captain Marcus Stone, the same officer from a year ago, walked in with two detectives. He gave Leo a brief, acknowledging nod before addressing the room. "Robert Chase, Martin Croft, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, falsification of records, and blackmail. You have the right to remain silent." As the detectives moved in, Robert stared at Vivian, a lifetime of control evaporating. "You stupid girl. You've destroyed everything I built." "No, Father," she said, her voice clear and final. "I just stopped you from destroying anything else." The aftermath was a media firestorm. Tech Dynasty implodes in murder-fraud scandal. The story had everything: wealth, tragedy, a miraculous child, and a dramatic boardroom arrest. The merger was voided. Apex Dynamics, stock plummeted, but Vivian, now free of her father's shadow, used the ensuing chaos to take the company private with a coalition of supportive investors. She became the CEO in truth, not just in title. Leo was not charged. The district attorney deemed him a victim and a whistleblower. Dr. Finch's testimony, given in exchange for immunity, corroborated everything. The case against Robert Chase and Martin Croft was airtight. 3 weeks later, Leo stood on the sidewalk outside a small, bright yellow house with a real yard. It was in a quiet neighborhood, not a glass tower. Vivian opened the door, dressed in jeans and a sweater. Lily peeked around from behind her. "Hey," Leo said. "Hey," Vivian replied. Lily grinned. "Are you here to see my new castle? It has a real drawbridge." He spent the afternoon there helping with the castle, eating pizza on the floor. It was messy and normal and perfect. When it was time to go, Lily hugged him goodbye. It was the first time. He held her, this small, warm, living miracle, and felt the ghost of the daughter he'd mourned finally, peacefully let go. At the door, Vivian handed him a legal document. It was a new filing with the court, petition to establish paternity and joint custody. Her name was already signed. Leo looked at her, stunned. "I was wrong," she said simply. "About what she needed. She doesn't need a fortress. She needs a family, and you are her father. I can't change the last 12 years, but I can stop stealing the next ones." Leo signed the document on the spot, his hands steady. 1 year later, the routine was their own. Lily spent weekends at Leo's house, where she had her own room and helped him fix things in the garage with toy tools. She learned about planets from him and about business contracts from her mom. She called him Dad. She called Vivian Mom. It was simple. On a Saturday afternoon, Leo was teaching Lily how to change a bicycle tire when she looked up, her face serious. "Dad, did Grandpa really try to hurt me and Mom?" Leo put down the wrench. They had been careful, but kids hear things. "Yes, honey, he did, but he can't hurt anyone ever again." Lily nodded, thoughtful. "Mom said you walked a really long way to find me, like a knight on a quest." Leo smiled, his heart full. "Something like that." "I'm glad you found me," she said, and went back to wrestling with the tire lever. So was he. The man who walked 6 miles with a wallet became the father who crossed an ocean of lies to bring his daughter home. And the CEO in the silk robe learned that the strongest foundations aren't made of money and power, but of truth and the courage to finally open the door. In the end, the story that began with a 6-mile walk wasn't about a wallet or a photo or even a billion-dollar secret. It was about the silent mathematics of the human heart, the unbearable weight of a single lie, multiplied by 12 years, and the exponential force it takes to finally tell the truth. Leo Rowan and Vivian Chase lived in 2 different worlds, but they were prisoners of the same fiction. He, in a prison of grief for a daughter who was alive. She, in a gilded cage of guilt and control. It took one lost object, one moment of weary courage, to shatter both cages and prove that the most dangerous walls are the ones we build to protect ourselves from each other. Their story forces an uncomfortable question. How many of us are living with a version of the past that isn't true? A story we've been told, or one we've chosen to believe because the reality is too painful, too complicated, or too terrifying to face. We edit our histories, we hide our photographs, we build entire identities on foundations of silence. But as Leo and Vivian discovered, a foundation of sand can't hold the weight of a real life. It can only hold the ghost of one. The real miracle was Lily's survival. It was the survival of a basic human decency in both her parents. In Leo, it was the unwavering belief that he was owed an answer and the physical endurance to go and get it. In Vivian, it was the buried seed of a mother's love, which, against all odds and her own fear, eventually grew strong enough to break through the concrete of her family's design. They were not perfect heroes. They were flawed, wounded people who found that the only way out of the maze was to turn and face the monster at its center together. Today, Apex Dynamics is a different company with a focus on medical transparency technologies. Rowan Auto has a new junior mechanic who specializes in Lego castle repair. And in a yellow house with a real yard, A family that was once erased from the official record now writes its own story, one messy, joyful day at a time. Some will say it's a fairy tale, that in the real world secrets that big are never uncovered and happy endings are rarely so clean, but perhaps that's the point. We are drawn to these stories not because they are common, but because they are possible. They are proof that sometimes the lost thing can be found, the broken thing can be mended, and the walk, no matter how long or how hard, is always worth taking if it leads you home. If you believe that some truths are worth walking 6 miles for, or that the right thing is worth doing even when it costs you everything, then this story is for you. Subscribe for more documentaries that explore the shadows and find the light on the other side.